Let's finish up this last part of page 2 and then we'll move on to 3. The internet is a wonderful place, and so we were right to cross that out because you can't use the word it is. It's kind of funny though, because like if you said Joe's car, apostrophe S, showing possession, its value, this is possession, but anyway, they said if you can't use it is, no apostrophe. So I learned something new today. You might not have. Okay, so when the car is new, its value is $28,000. So that is the y-intercept. Now it says, okay, let's make v of t 0. So in your brains, when you see that, does that say make y 0? Because isn't b a t or y? Okay, so you got to start making connections like that. Don't just read and go, okay, we're going to make b a t 0. Oh, well, b a t is y. This is our function notation. So this is asking me to make y 0. So what are they asking me to find? The x-intercept, correct? Because whenever y is 0, that means it's on the x-axis. So what is the mathematical name of this value? X-intercept, or it's also called the horizontal intercept. So anytime y is 0, it's an x-intercept or horizontal intercept. Okay, so what value of t is v of t 0? So that means go back to your equation. So let's bring our equation right here. So v of t, let's write it here, equals negative 1750t plus 28,000. And this says find t when we make v of t 0. In other words, that's saying find x, because x is what's in parentheses, when y is 0. That's how you should think about it when you look. So make this 0, as it's saying. And you also did this on your last test, so this should be familiar. We found the x and y intercepts for a couple different problems. So I need my letters to the left. So anything with a variable on it moves left. And anything without a variable on it stays right. So now my new equation is 1750t equals 28,000. So to solve that, we have to divide both sides by 1750. Divide by 1750. So we get 28,000 divided by 1750. 16. And remember, this is an x-intercept. That means the answer should be written as a point. So here's my x, here's my y. And we know this is x again, remember, because it's what's in parentheses. That's always my x. So the x-intercept would be x, y, 16, 0. So now we need to write about that one. So let's box this here so it doesn't get mixed up. So I would do the same thing we did here, write number of years here. Anytime I'm asked to write about a point, that's the first thing I do is label what x is, label what y is, and then the sentence just falls in your lap. So this is your value in dollars. So after 16 years, the car's value is $0. Okay, so after 16 years, basically your car's not worth anything. Okay, let's write that out. After 16 years. I guess a nice way to say it, instead of is worth $0, we could say the car has lost all of its value. That's a little nicer way to write it. So after 16 years, the car has lost all of its value. And now I know, no apostrophe. I love it when I learn something new. The car has lost all of its value. Okay. I do believe we're done. So 2 things were asked on there. They wanted us to find t. They wanted to know what that represents, x-intercept, and then they wanted us to write a sentence. Very typical of a question that we would put on a paper pencil test, this 2-page thing we just did. Very typical. Okay. So on page 3, we're interpreting rate of change and the constant term, which is the vertical intercept. So in other words, we're interpreting the m and the b in an equation. So we want to know what they mean. So remember, y equals mx plus b. So what's m? The rate of change. What's b? The starting point, or the, we call it the y-intercept, but that's, so we're going to like make sentences or write the meaning of what they mean in this particular sentence. It's kind of a cool little exercise, actually. So for each scenario below, answer the questions about the slope, m, which is always what's in front of x, or the variable, and the vertical intercept, function output when the input variable is zero. That's just saying when the y-intercept, which means your x is 0 because your input is x. Include units in your answers. So the average lifespan of French women has been tracked, and the data can be modeled by this linear equation. So remember, we're always comparing this back up to this. Yes, they may be using different letters, but it's all the same thing. In place of y, they have an L, which is lifespan. The slope, you can tell, is 0.3. In place of x, they're using t, which is probably time in years, I'm guessing. T is number of years since 1960. And then our y-intercept is 70. 0, 70. So what is the slope? 0.3. And L is the lifespan in years. T is the number of years since 1960. And they told us to label everything. So we need to label that. And remember, slope, rate of change, all those things, they get labeled y per x. So my y is over here, it's L, so y would be years per number of years since 1960. So 0.3 years for every year after 1960. So y per x is years per number of years since 1960. So a lot of students go, what? That doesn't make sense. Well, the slope is positive. So that means their age is increasing by 0.3 years per number of years since 1960. I know it's kind of a weird little thing, but so what is the meaning of slope? So their lifespan is increasing by, and then you just write that. So their lifespan is, and because it's a positive slope, that's why we're using the word increasing. If it would be negative, we'd say decreasing. So in layman's terms, it just says as the times become more modern, people are living longer. So after 1960, each year people's lifespan increased by 0.3, 0.3, 0.3, 0.3. So that's what that says in layman's years, or layman's language. So as times get more and more modern, lifespans are increasing by that much every year. Starting with 1960, that's kind of like when the whole science thing hit, and all the medical marvels and things that have happened. So their lifespan is increasing by 0.3 years for each year after 1960. So for each, remember how we discussed, is another word for per. It just made more sense in this. So every year they live past 1960, their lifespan is increasing by 0.3 years because of the advances of medicine. Okay, when t is 0, so put 0 there, 0.3 times 0 is 0. We get L equals 70. So when t is 0, what is L? So it'd be 0, 70, or we could write L equals 70. So they're asking us to find t is your x, right? So when x is 0, this is called the y-intercept. What is the meaning of this L value? So remember how I said anytime you're asked to write about a point, you should label it with the data. So t is number of years since 1960. So 0 years since 1960. So what does that mean? If it's 0 years since 1960, doesn't that mean 1960? Yeah. And L is the lifespan in years. So now that we have labels on it, does it make sense? In 1960, the lifespan was 70, or average lifespan of French women was 70 years old. So in 1961, it'd be 70.3. In 1962, it'd be 70.6. In 1963, it'd be 70.9. So you just keep adding 0.3 for every year. So in 1960, the average lifespan of French women was 70 years old. So in 1960, the average lifespan of French women was 70 years. We wouldn't say 70 years old. I accidentally said that. So the average woman lived 70 years, French woman, in 1960. And like I said, every year according to our slope.